Even though he didn't drink, smoke, or drive his own car, he quit breathing at the age of 42.
Elvis Presley's body had barely arrived at Baptist Memorial Hospital when the murmurs began. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, everyone in that hallway felt it. This wasn't just another high-profile death. This was the moment. The myth of invincibility surrounding the king of rock and roll shattered, and the truth lying underneath was far worse than anyone expected. The pilot, the bodyguards, the paramedics, they all told their version, but none of them saw what the autopsy team saw when they unzipped the bag and looked at the man the world had worshipped for 2 decades. The truth hit them long before the autopsy even began. Elvis Presley hadn't died suddenly. His body had been fighting a war for years. One doctor later said, "It was like examining a man twice his age." And he meant it. Inside the hospital, chaos erupted. No one even knew who was technically in charge. Phone lines were already blowing up. Staff were being pulled from other departments. Security officers were told to block every hallway leading to the morgue. Reporters were circling the building within minutes. Some insiders whispered that the governor's office was already calling. People wanted answers, and fast. But the team performing the autopsy didn't want speed. They wanted truth. And the truth was not something the public was prepared to hear. The lead pathologist stepped forward and took a breath before beginning. He knew this would be the most scrutinized autopsy in American history. Every line in the report would be examined, questioned, doubted. But nothing could prepare him for what he was about to uncover. Because the moment they examined Elvis's torso, the tone changed. The room went still. The doctor stared at what he was seeing, and all he said, quietly, was, "This isn't what we were told." Elvis's outward appearance, what the fans saw at concerts, on planes, outside Graceland, didn't reveal the full picture. But up close, under the harsh morgue lights, the signs were undeniable. His organs told a story of long-term suffering. His skin revealed years of swelling and inflammation. His stomach showed something that stunned the medical team so deeply that several of them looked at each other in disbelief. Whatever the official story would later claim, Elvis Presley had been in a catastrophic physical decline. Yet while the doctors were realizing this, the administrators upstairs were panicking. They demanded to know what the autopsy would say, what the official cause of death should be, how much of the truth should be released, and whether certain details, especially the sensitive ones, should be left out entirely. One nurse overheard someone mutter, "We can't put that on the report. Do you know what that will do to his legacy?" But in the autopsy room, legacy didn't matter. Fame didn't matter. Myth didn't matter. All that mattered was what was in front of them, the unfiltered reality of Elvis Presley's final years. Before the first incision was even made, the doctor already knew the public version of Elvis's death would be incomplete. Too many people had motives. Too many reputations were at stake. Too many careers had relied on Elvis continuing to perform, continue the tours, continue the money machine, no matter the cost to his own health. But the doctor could not ignore the one question that kept tightening his chest. How long had Elvis been suffering like this? And why hadn't anyone stopped him? When the autopsy finally began, the room was silent. No chatter, no rushing. Every person present understood they were about to uncover what really killed Elvis Presley. Not just the sudden moment in the bathroom, but the years of silent deterioration leading up to it. Minutes into the examination, the pathologist paused again. His eyes widened slightly. He looked at another physician and said, almost in disbelief. This is much worse than anyone imagined. That's when the staff realized the truth wasn't going to be simple. It wasn't going to fit neatly into a headline. It wasn't going to comfort fans. It was going to expose a long chain of medical issues, mismanagement, and suffering that had been hidden from the world. The hospital tried to prepare a statement, but they couldn't write one fast enough to keep up with what the autopsy was revealing inside that locked room. And the most shocking part? They hadn't even reached the internal organs yet, because the real horror, the discovery that would change everything, was waiting inside Elvis's stomach. And when the doctor finally opened it, he knew immediately that the world had been told only half the truth. The doctor's hand stopped the moment he opened Elvis Presley's stomach. Even in a career spent examining the most heartbreaking cases imaginable, he had never seen anything like this. Not in someone Elvis's age, not in someone with his resources, not in someone who was supposed to be surrounded by the best medical care in the world. The first thing he noticed was the extraordinary amount of undigested medication. Not one or two pills, dozens. Enough that one assistant quietly whispered, This can't be right." But it was right. Elvis's body had been overwhelmed by a pharmaceutical storm he wasn't built to survive. The official story later softened it, polished it, turned it into something vague. But the truth staring back at the doctors was brutal. Elvis's digestive system had slowed to a near standstill. His colon was distended, his intestines strained, his stomach packed with medication his body could no longer process. This wasn't a man who overdosed recklessly. This was a man whose body had been collapsing for years. The doctor moved through the examination slowly, methodically, the way a man does when each discovery hits harder than the last. Elvis's heart, enlarged to nearly twice the normal size, carried the weight of relentless strain. His liver showed signs of chronic stress. His arteries were thickened, scarred from a lifetime of pressure, pain, and exhaustion. But what struck the team wasn't just the physical breakdown, it was the cause behind it. Elvis Presley had been prescribed medication at a level no human being should have endured. Painkillers, sleeping aids, stimulants, sedatives, often stacked on top of each other, each one intended to fix the damage the previous one created. A cycle that echoed the life he was forced to live. Perform, recover, repeat. The public liked to imagine Elvis as careless, out of control, indulgent. The autopsy told a different story entirely. Elvis wasn't chasing a high. He was chasing relief. Relief from chronic pain, nerve trouble, insomnia, debilitating fatigue, and the crushing weight of a career that no longer felt like his own. One doctor quietly said he wasn't living on pills. He was surviving on them. And even that survival was beginning to fail. Elvis's colon was in such a compromised state that it stunned the medical examiner. Years of slowed digestion, dehydration, and medication buildup had created a condition that would have caused discomfort so severe it was almost unimaginable. Yet Elvis kept performing, kept touring, kept smiling for crowds that never knew the agony hidden beneath the jumpsuits and the spotlight. His veins told another story. Years of injections, medical treatments administered on the road, last-minute fixes to keep him upright for a show he should have been resting from. His organs were aging faster than he was. His systems were collapsing silently. And the people around him, the ones scheduling non-stop performances, had ignored every warning sign. But it was the second layer of the autopsy that deepened the tragedy. because Elvis's internal health didn't show the recklessness of a man who gave up. It became clear that Elvis wasn't just sick. He was being managed in a way that prioritized the show over the man. The autopsy doctor later admitted it felt like reading the medical history of someone who wasn't allowed to stop. And that was the problem. Elvis wasn't allowed to stop. He'd tell close friends he was afraid he wouldn't wake up after the shows. He'd whisper to bodyguards that the pain in his chest scared him. He'd admit privately that he could feel something was wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. But every time he tried to slow down, someone reminded him of the contract, the schedule, the money, the expectations. The public thought Elvis was unpredictable. In truth, he was trapped, and the autopsy revealed just how long he had been paying the price. While examining Elvis's spine and nerve pathways, the doctor found signs of chronic, untreated pain that would have made ordinary life difficult, let alone performing on stage under blinding lights for 2 hours. The nerve damage connected to years of stress, injury, and medication side effects. Then came another revelation. Elvis's heart had been struggling for far longer than anyone admitted publicly. Early signs of cardiomyopathy were present. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. It was a years-long progression that had been masked, ignored, or minimized. Some members of Elvis's inner circle had known he was sick, but they didn't know how sick. And the ones who did know didn't stop the machine. One assistant coroner later said, "It felt like we were looking at the body of a man who'd been asked to lift a mountain every day." The doctor examining the heart murmured, "This could have been prevented." Not prevented as in immortality. Prevented as in this level of collapse. But what haunted the medical team the most wasn't the physical damage. It was the emotional truth behind it. Because buried in Elvis's medical file was a handwritten note from a physician, a note written months earlier. It read, "Patient expresses fear of dying alone. Recommends extended rest. Request denied." Denied! Denied because of the tour. Denied because of commitments. Denied because Elvis Presley wasn't treated like a patient. He was treated like a product. The autopsy doctor felt anger rising as he continued his work. Elvis hadn't been reckless. He hadn't been careless. He had been drowning in a system that looked at him and saw dollar signs instead of symptoms. But the most disturbing moment came when the doctor reached a detail that would eventually be sealed away, locked behind legal walls for decades. It wasn't a single organ. It wasn't a single pill. It wasn't a single diagnosis. It was the pattern. Every major condition Elvis had, heart weakness, colon dysfunction, nerve issues, chronic inflammation, medication overload, should have triggered an emergency intervention years earlier. But instead of intervention, Elvis received more pressure, more shows, more expectations, more pills to keep him going just long enough to get through the next performance. The doctor realized something devastating. Elvis didn't die in a moment. He died over time, piece by piece, under the weight of a schedule no human could endure. And as the team finished their notes, one question hung in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Who failed Elvis Presley more? His body or the people who refused to let him rest? The doctor knew the answer. He also knew the public wasn't ready to hear it, because the next part of the autopsy, the part that would be sealed, exposed exactly how preventable Elvis's fate truly was. And decades later, when those sealed findings resurfaced, they revealed the part of Elvis's final story the world was never meant to know. The last section of Elvis Presley's autopsy report, the part locked away for decades, didn't just describe what killed him. It explained why his final day unfolded the way it did. And for the medical examiner, it was the most painful truth of all. Elvis had been living on borrowed time long before August 16, 1977. To understand what the autopsy found, you have to understand what happened in the final hours of Elvis's life. That morning at Graceland was unusually quiet. Elvis had barely slept the night before. Another long night of restlessness, pacing, discomfort he couldn't fully articulate. His closest aides knew something was off. They had seen him tired before, seen him weak, seen him frustrated. But this was different. His breathing was heavier. His face looked strained. Even his voice carried a dullness, like a man forcing himself through every step. He tried reading. He tried talking. He tried distraction after distraction, but nothing settled him. His body was begging for rest, but his mind wouldn't allow it. He was trapped in that cycle again. Pain, sleeplessness, medication, and the crushing pressure to appear okay. And the autopsy would later reveal why that pressure became unbearable. One of the most significant findings in the sealed section was the condition of Elvis's heart. Not just enlarged, not just strained. It was the heart of a man fighting a long, losing battle. The report described damage consistent with years of overwork, inflammation, and systemic stress. It didn't belong to a man in his early 40s. It belonged to a man decades older, worn down long before the world admitted he was struggling. The second revelation was even more heartbreaking. The colon issues, heavily redacted from public versions, were far more severe than anyone knew. His digestive system had essentially stopped functioning properly. The pain, the swelling, the distension, it wasn't a recent development. It was the result of years of dysfunction that had never been treated aggressively, never been given the time or care it demanded. The medical examiner understood instantly. Elvis had been living with pain few people could endure. And then came the medications, the thing tabloids turned into mockery, but the autopsy revealed with chilling clarity. Elvis wasn't abusing pills for fun. He was using them because his body was shutting down. Sleeping was nearly impossible. Eating became unpredictable. Performing was an ordeal. He survived only because he forced himself through it. Every prescription was an attempt to solve a different problem, but together, they created a storm inside him that no body could withstand. That morning at Graceland, when Elvis went into the bathroom and told Ginger he was going to read, he wasn't escaping. He wasn't hiding. He was trying to settle the pain. He was trying to make his body relax long enough to breathe normally. His final moments weren't dramatic. They weren't reckless. They were quiet, tragically quiet. A man exhausted beyond imagination. A man whose body had finally reached the limit of what it could carry. When the autopsy doctor connected the timeline with the physical evidence, everything clicked. Elvis had not died from a single cause. He died from all of it: the heart strain, the digestive collapse, the chronic pain, the endless cycle of medication, the unmanaged conditions, the mental and physical exhaustion. He died because he had been pushed past the edge long before that morning. And that's why the sealed portion of the autopsy mattered so much. It didn't hide wrongdoing. It hid the cruelty of the machine around him. Because if the world had seen how broken his body truly was, how much damage had been ignored or minimized, it would have forced people to confront the truth. Elvis didn't die because he let himself go. He died because he kept pushing when every part of him was begging for rest. He died trying to live up to a legend. The medical examiner later admitted he never forgot the sight of Elvis's heart, not because of the damage, but because it symbolized something larger. Elvis didn't die of excess, he said. He died of effort. The effort to perform, the effort to please, the effort to carry a world that never let him put it down. When the sealed findings were finally revisited years later, they revealed exactly what the doctor feared. Elvis had been fighting a losing war alone, while everyone around him insisted the show must go on. In the end, the autopsy didn't just tell the world how Elvis died, it told the world how much he suffered while he lived. Now that the truth behind Elvis's final hours and sealed autopsy is finally understood, what do you think his story reveals about fame, pressure, and being pushed beyond human limits? Share your thoughts below, and if you want more untold Elvis stories, hit subscribe for the next deep dive.